Hey there, and welcome to True Scary Stories. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're from and what time you're watching. That helps YouTube know you love creepy stories, and it'll keep sending more your way.
3 true scary ghost stories. Hey everyone, before we get started, I just want to say, if you're listening to this alone at night, you might want to turn on a light. These 3 stories were sent to me by subscribers who swear they're true, and honestly, after reading them, I believe it. These aren't your typical ghost stories. These are real people, real places, and real terror. So, get comfortable, or maybe don't. Let's begin. Story 1. The Apartment on Maple Street. So this first story comes from a guy named Derek. He's 26, lives in Ohio, and about 2 years ago, he moved into what he thought was the perfect apartment. Cheap rent, quiet neighborhood, close to his work. It seemed like a no-brainer. The building was old, built sometime in the 1940s, but it had charm, hardwood floors, high ceilings, big windows, the kind of place you see in movies. Derek had been living with roommates for years, dealing with their mess, their noise, their drama. This was finally his chance to have his own space, his own place, peace and quiet. The landlord was this older woman named Mrs. Chen, and when Derek met her to sign the lease, she seemed hesitant. She kept asking him if he was sure he wanted the unit, not the building, specifically that unit, apartment 3C. Derek just figured she was being cautious, making sure he could afford it or whatever. Maybe she'd been burned by bad tenants before. But then she said something that stuck with him. "The last tenant," she said quietly, looking down at the paperwork. "He only stayed 3 weeks." Derek laughed it off. He figured the guy probably found a better place or couldn't handle the old pipes or the lack of air conditioning. Mrs. Chen didn't laugh. She just stared at him with these dark, tired eyes and said, "Keep your bedroom door locked at night." Weird, right? But Derek needed the place. His lease at his old apartment was up and he'd already given notice. He couldn't back out now. So he signed the papers, took the keys, and moved in the following weekend. The first week was fine. Normal. He unpacked, set up his furniture, hung some pictures. The apartment was bigger than he expected. The living room had this huge window that let in tons of natural light during the day. The kitchen was small but functional. And the bedroom was at the end of a short hallway, separated from the rest of the apartment. It felt private. Isolated, almost. The building was quiet, almost too quiet. You know that feeling when you move into a new place and every little creak and groan freaks you out? Derek had that, but he figured he'd get used to it. The building was old. Old buildings make noise. That's just how it is. Then, about 9 days in, things started happening. It was a Tuesday night. Derek had just gotten home from work, tired as hell. He worked in IT, spent all day staring at screens, dealing with angry people who couldn't figure out how to reset their passwords. All he wanted was to eat something, watch some TV, and zone out. He made himself some pasta, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and settled onto his couch. He was watching some random show on Netflix when he heard it. Footsteps. Not from the apartment above him. Not from the hallway outside. From inside his apartment. Specifically, from his bedroom. Derek froze. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. His bedroom door was closed. He always kept it closed during the day. It was just a habit. He lived alone. There was no one else in the apartment. He muted the TV and listened. Creak, creak, creak. Slow, deliberate footsteps, like someone was pacing back and forth. the sound of weight shifting on old floorboards. His heart started hammering in his chest. He set his plate down on the coffee table, hands shaking slightly. He grabbed his phone, thought about calling 911, but then the footsteps stopped. Just like that. Silence. Derek sat there for what felt like an eternity, just staring at his bedroom door. The silence was somehow worse than the footsteps. He could hear his own breathing, loud in his ears. He could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, but nothing from the bedroom. Finally, he worked up the courage to check. He grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer, yeah, a knife, like that would help, and slowly walked down the hallway to the bedroom. Each step felt like it took forever. The floorboards creaked under his feet, and he winced at every sound. He put his hand on the doorknob. It was cold. Colder than it should have been. He took a deep breath and opened it. Nothing. The room was exactly as he'd left it that morning. Bed made, curtains drawn. The window was closed and locked. He checked the closet, pulling the door open quickly, half expecting someone to jump out at him. Empty. Just his clothes hanging there. He got down on his hands and knees and checked under the bed. Nothing but some dust bunnies and a sock he'd been looking for. He stood in the middle of the room, knife still in his hand, feeling ridiculous. There was no one here. There was no way anyone could have gotten in. The front door had been locked when he got home. The window was 3 stories up. No fire escape. He tried to convince himself it was just the building settling. Old buildings do that, right? Expand and contract with temperature changes. That could sound like footsteps if you weren't paying attention, if your mind was playing tricks on you. But deep down, he knew what he heard. Those were footsteps. Clear, distinct, human footsteps. That night, Derek remembered what Mrs. Chen said. He locked his bedroom door before going to sleep. He felt stupid doing it, locking himself in his own bedroom, but he did it anyway. Better safe than sorry. He didn't sleep well. Every little sound made him jolt awake. The radiator clanking, the building settling, a car passing outside. He kept looking at the door, half expecting the handle to turn. But nothing happened. By the time his alarm went off at 6 a.m., he was exhausted. The next day at work, he convinced himself he'd overreacted. Stress, probably. New apartment jitters. That night, he came home determined to relax and enjoy his place. He made dinner, cracked open another beer, and tried to forget about it. But then it happened again. This time, it was worse. Derek was in the kitchen making a sandwich around 8 p.m. when he heard a voice, a whisper. It was so faint he almost missed it, but it was there, coming from the living room. Just one word. Derek. His name. Clear as day. He dropped the knife he was holding. It clattered onto the counter, and the sound made him jump. His whole body went cold. Every hair on his arms stood up. He slowly turned toward the living room, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. Nothing. No one. The TV wasn't even on. Derek. There it was again. Closer this time, like someone was standing right behind him. He could feel breath on the back of his neck. Cold breath. He spun around so fast he almost lost his balance. Still nothing. Just his empty kitchen. The refrigerator humming. The faucet dripping slightly. But then he saw it. In the living room, on the wall opposite the window, there was a shadow. Not his shadow. The angle was all wrong. The light was coming from the kitchen behind him, so his shadow should have been in front of him, not on that wall. This shadow was too tall, too thin, elongated, like someone had stretched it, and it was moving, slowly, stretching across the wall like fingers reaching for something, reaching for him. Derek didn't wait. He didn't try to rationalize it. He didn't grab his phone or his keys or his wallet. He just ran. Straight out the front door, down the hallway, down 3 flights of stairs, out of the building. He didn't stop until he was standing on the sidewalk, gasping for air, hands shaking uncontrollably. A couple walking their dog looked at him like he was crazy. He probably looked it, wild-eyed, pale, standing there in his socks because he hadn't even put shoes on. He called Mrs. Chen. She didn't pick up. He left a frantic voicemail, his words tumbling out in a panic, telling her what happened, demanding to know what the hell was going on in that apartment, what happened there, what she wasn't telling him. She called him back an hour later. He was sitting in his car at that point, parked down the street, trying to calm down. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Almost resigned, like she'd expected this call. I should have told you. Someone died in that apartment. A man. About 6 months before you moved in. Derek felt his stomach drop. His mouth went dry. How did he die? Mrs. Chen hesitated. He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. He hung himself. In the bedroom. His girlfriend found him 3 days later. Derek's blood ran cold. The bedroom. The footsteps. The locked door that Mrs. Chen had warned me about. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice shaking with anger, now not just fear. Would you have moved in if I did? She had a point. He wouldn't have. No one would. But that didn't make it okay. That didn't make it legal. In some states, you have to disclose that kind of thing. But Derek didn't care about laws right now. He just wanted out. Mrs. Chen told him he could break the lease, no penalty. She'd refund his deposit, everything. She sounded almost relieved. Derek didn't even go back that night. He couldn't. He stayed at his friend Jake's place, sleeping on the couch, barely sleeping at all, really. The next day, he went back with Jake to pack his stuff. Jake thought he was overreacting, making jokes about ghosts and telling Derek he just had too much to drink. But Derek didn't care. He needed his stuff, and he needed to get out. When they got to the building and climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, Derek's blood turned to ice. The door to apartment 3C was open. Wide open. Derek knew he'd locked it when he ran out. He remembered fumbling with the lock, his hands shaking. He definitely locked it. But it was wide open. Swinging slightly on its hinges, like someone had just walked through it. Jake looked at Derek, and for the first time, he wasn't joking anymore. Dude, we need to go, now. They stepped inside carefully. The apartment was freezing. He could see his breath. It was June. There was no air conditioning running. There was no reason for it to be this cold. And then they saw it. On the living room wall, right where Derek had seen the shadow the night before, there were words, written in what looked like dust or ash. The letters were uneven, shaky, like they'd been written with a finger. Don't leave. Jake pulled out his phone and took a picture. His hands were shaking now, too. We need to go, now. They grabbed what they could. Derek threw garbage bags, grabbed his laptop, his important documents. They left the furniture, the TV, everything. Mrs. Chen could deal with it. He just needed to get out. As they were leaving, Derek looked back one more time. The words were still there on the wall, and in the doorway to the bedroom he swore he saw something. A shape. A silhouette. Just for a second. Then it was gone. Derek lives in a different place now. A newer building in a busier part of town. Lots of neighbors, lots of noise. He pays more in rent, but he doesn't care. He'll take noise over silence any day. But he still thinks about that apartment sometimes. About the footsteps. The voice. The shadow. And those words on the wall. He wonders if the next tenant heard them too. The footsteps. the voice calling their name. He wonders if they stayed longer than he did. And he wonders what would have happened if he hadn't left when he did. Story 2. The Babysitter. All right, so this second story is from a girl named Emily. She's 22 now, but this happened to her when she was 16. She was babysitting for a family in her neighborhood, the Morgans. Nice family, 2 kids, a boy and a girl, ages 6 and 8. The parents were going out for their anniversary dinner, and they asked Emily to watch the kids for a few hours. Emily had babysat for them before, so it was no big deal. The kids were well behaved, the house was comfortable, and the pay was decent. Easy job. The Morgans lived in an older house, a 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb. Emily had always liked the house. It had that cozy family vibe. But there was one room she always found a little off: the basement. Mr. Morgan had mentioned it once, told her the kids weren't allowed down there. Too much clutter, old furniture, that kind of thing. Emily never questioned it. She didn't have a reason to go down there anyway. So that night, the parents left around 6 p.m. Emily fed the kids dinner, played some games with them, and by 8:30 she had them in bed. The house was quiet. She went downstairs to the living room, plopped on the couch, and turned on the TV. Around 9 o'clock, she heard a noise, a thump, from the basement. Emily muted the TV, listened. Nothing. She figured it was just the house settling, or maybe something fell over. Old houses do that. But then she heard it again. Thump. 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 Like footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps coming up the basement stairs. Emily's heart started racing. She stood up, staring at the basement door. It was in the hallway, just off the kitchen. The door was closed. Locked, actually. Mr. Morgan kept it locked because of the kids. The footsteps stopped, right at the door. Emily could hear her own breathing loud in the silence. She didn't know what to do. Call the police? The parents? She grabbed her phone, hands shaking, but before she could dial, she heard it. Knock. 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 Someone, or something, was knocking on the basement door from the inside. Emily felt like her legs were going to give out. She stared at the door, paralyzed. The knocking came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. Who's there? She called out, her voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Just silence. And then the doorknob started to turn. Emily screamed. She ran to the front door, fumbling with the lock, and threw it open. She sprinted outside into the front yard, gasping for air, and immediately called Mr. Morgan. There's someone in your house, in the basement. They were trying to get out. Mr. Morgan told her to stay outside, that he was calling the police and coming home right away. Emily stood on the front lawn, clutching her phone, staring at the house. The lights were still on inside. Everything looked normal, but she knew what she heard. The police arrived within 10 minutes. They searched the entire house, every room, every closet, the attic, the garage, and then they went to the basement. The door was still locked. Mr. Morgan unlocked it, and the officers went down. Emily watched from the top of the stairs, her heart pounding. They were down there for a few minutes. When they came back up, one of the officers had a strange look on his face. Is there anyone else who has access to this house? He asked Mr. Morgan. No, Mr. Morgan said, just us. Why? The officer glanced at Emily, then back at Mr. Morgan. There's a sleeping bag down there, and food wrappers, recent ones. Emily felt her blood turn to ice. Someone had been living in the basement. The police searched the area, checked for signs of forced entry, but they couldn't find anything. No broken windows, no picked locks. Whoever it was had either left or was hiding somewhere else. Mr. Morgan and his wife came home immediately. They were horrified. They had no idea anyone had been down there. The basement door was always locked. They rarely went down there themselves. The police filed a report, told them to change the locks, install a security system. The Morgans did all of that. But Emily, she never babysat for them again. Here's the creepy part. A few weeks later, Emily ran into Mrs. Morgan at the grocery store. Mrs. Morgan looked exhausted, like she hadn't been sleeping. She pulled Emily aside and told her something that made her skin crawl. After that night, they started hearing noises. At night, footsteps in the basement, even though they'd checked 100 times and no one was there. Mrs. Morgan said she went down there one day and found something she swears wasn't there before. A handprint on the wall, small, like a child's. But the thing is, it was inside the wall, behind a crack in the plaster, like it had been there for years, decades even. Mrs. Morgan told Emily they were planning to move. Emily didn't blame them.
Story 3. The Night Shift. All right, last story. This one's from a guy named Marcus. He's 29, works as a security guard at a hospital in Pennsylvania. Night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. He's been doing it for about 3 years, and for the most part, it's boring. Quiet. Exactly what you'd expect from a night shift at a hospital. But about 8 months ago, something happened that made him seriously reconsider his job. So the hospital Marcus works at is old, like really old, built in the early 1900s. It's been renovated over the years, but parts of it still have that old, creepy vibe. Dim lighting, long hallways, weird shadows. Most of the staff hate working nights because of it. Marcus didn't mind. He'd walk his rounds, check the doors, make sure everything was secure. The hardest part was staying awake. But one night, that changed. It was around 2 a.m. Marcus was doing his rounds on the 4th floor, which is mostly administrative offices. During the day, it's busy. At night, dead silent. His footsteps echoed off the tile floors, and the fluorescent lights flickered as he walked. He was halfway down the hall when he heard it. Singing. Faint, but unmistakable. A woman's voice, singing a lullaby. Marcus stopped. His hand instinctively went to the flashlight on his belt. He listened. The singing was coming from one of the offices, room 427. Marcus walked toward the door. It was closed, but the singing was definitely coming from inside. He knocked. "Security? Anyone in there?" The singing stopped. Silence. Marcus tried the door. Locked. He pulled out his keyring, found the right key, and unlocked it. He pushed the door open slowly, shining his flashlight inside. Empty. Just a desk, a chair, a filing cabinet. No one. No windows open, no vents big enough for someone to crawl through, nothing. Marcus backed out of the room, locked the door, and continued his rounds. He tried to shake it off, told himself he was just tired. Maybe he imagined it. But then it happened again. The next night. Same time, same floor, same room. The singing, the lullaby, clear as day. This time, Marcus didn't knock. He unlocked the door and threw it open, flashlight ready. Nothing. He searched the room top to bottom. Nothing. No one. No rational explanation. And then as he was standing in the middle of the room, the door slammed shut behind him. Marcus spun around. He ran to the door, tried the handle. Locked. From the outside. His heart was pounding. He banged on the door, shouted for help, but no one was around. The 4th floor was deserted at night. And then he heard it. The singing. Again. But this time it was right behind him. He turned around, flashlight shaking in his hand. Still nothing. But the air in the room had changed. It was colder. He could see his breath. And then, in the corner of the room, he saw it. A shadow. But not a normal shadow. It was darker, thicker, and it was moving. Slowly rising, like someone standing up. Marcus didn't wait. He threw his weight against the door, and by some miracle, it burst open. He stumbled into the hallway and ran. He didn't stop until he was back in the security office, door locked, hands shaking. He filed a report the next day, told his supervisor everything. The supervisor just laughed, said the building was old, probably just weird acoustics or something. But Marcus could tell he didn't believe his own explanation. Marcus kept working there, but he never went back to the fourth floor alone at night. He'd either skip it or bring another guard with him. But here's the thing. About a month ago, Marcus was talking to one of the older nurses. She'd been working at the hospital for over 30 years. He casually mentioned the fourth floor, the singing, room 427. The nurse's face went pale. "You heard her too?" she asked. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Heard who? The nurse told him that back in the 1950s, a nurse used to work on the fourth floor. She had a mental breakdown, killed herself in room 427. Before she did, witnesses said they heard her singing a lullaby to herself. The same lullaby Marcus heard. The nurse said it's been reported dozens of times over the years, always at night, always on the fourth floor, always room 427. Marcus still works there. He needs the job. But he avoids that floor like the plague. And sometimes, late at night, when the hospital is quiet, he swears he can still hear it. The singing. Faint. Distant. Waiting. So there you have it. 3 stories. 3 people who experience something they can't explain. Are they true? I'll let you decide. But if you're ever in an old apartment building, babysitting in a house with a locked basement, or working the night shift in a hospital, maybe keep your guard up. Thanks for listening. Sleep well. Or try to.